All right, what's going on, everybody? We're doing live here. We're doing a live here, just reviewing a bunch of books on art, drawing, tons and tons of art books. That's what we're reviewing right now. Let me see if I get this camera a little bit closer. Mm, yeah, all right. All right. So, got a bunch of books here, and we're going to just talk about some of these books that I really found incredibly helpful for learning how to paint. And I have a bunch more, but I'm just going to stick with these. These books tend to find their own way around the world, and I don't know where they all go. What book is this? That book of sketching. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about some of these exciting books here, and also I have. Where's my other phone? Ah, here we go. All right, and another thing I highly recommend is Amazon Audible. Amazon Audible has been great for learning how to paint, how to draw. And I want to start with some Audible books right now that have been incredibly helpful to me. But I don't have a physical copy of them. So, and excuse the dirty shirt. It's got paint on them. I'm gonna go paint it a little bit, but it's one of those things. Can you trust the artist who doesn't have any paint on them? I don't think you can. They have to have something on them. I'm just trying to see if it's still wet. 'Cause I want to get it onto this nice couch. We got it reupholstered a little while ago. It's a family heirloom. But let's go ahead and start with this. I want to start with this book right here. And this book is, we're going to pull it up. Actually, two books. Let's start with What Are You Looking At? That's the title of the book. Let me just pull it up here on Amazon Audible. I could talk about books for hours and hours and hours. What are you looking at? So, can you really learn about painting from an audiobook? And I say yes. Not because it teaches you the technical skills, but because it's going to teach you, or you're going to be able to learn from a lot of these books. From these books, you're going to be able to learn your interests. I think that's a really powerful thing. So this book is called What Are You Looking At? It's on Amazon Audible. It's a great listen on Amazon Audible. If you just want, whether you're just interested in art history, or you really want to get a rundown of modern art or contemporary art or any of these things, or you just want to get some insight as to like why people love some of these paintings, that you hear the common phrase, my 8-year-old could do that, right? So you hear that phrase quite often. And if you've ever just been curious about like where all these artists come from, right? Because art is never made in a vacuum. It's made in the world, right? So because it's made in a world, there's all these thoughts and ideas that go into art and creativity. And this book has a pretty decent authority on it. It's got 4.6, 12,000 ratings, and it's written by Will Gompertz. So Will Gompertz, I believe, was a former director at Tate Modern, and he worked with a lot of really really well-known artists and art pieces. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic book. It's called What Are You Looking At? The Surprising, Shocking, and Sometimes Strange Story of 150 Years of Modern Art. And I find it an incredibly fascinating book to learn art from. And here's the funny thing is I listened to this book a couple times on Audible, but it is one of those books where, you know, you definitely want to get the physical copy, and I probably will get the physical copy at some point. But it's an amazing book. Will Gompertz. He has 2 books. What are you looking at? And see what you're missing. But here's the first book. I'm going to recommend his at first because not only does it give you like a really great history of art from Impressionism to today, but it also gives you a wonderful like uh, curatorial perspective on art as well. And I find it an absolutely great book. So let's see what else. Um, let's start with like the most basic thing, right? The easiest way to learn how to paint, I believe, is really to learn how to draw first. Now, you know, and if you don't have the paint supplies, like if for whatever reason you want to learn how to paint at some point, but you just aren't ready to commit to getting all the supplies, then picking up a pen and paper or pencil and paper is probably the easiest, quickest ways to get started. And my bird is going to join us on the conversation. Let's see how she's looking. She was having some issues the other day. How you doing, birdie? You doing all right? What's going on, baby girl? Yes? You doing all right? So I had to give her a little bath the other day. I'm just hoping she's doing all right. Yeah, you look, your feathers are all clean and puffy. You look healthy. Okay, cool. I haven't checked on her since. But with these books, this is a fantastic book, Beginner's Guide, the complete Beginner's Guide to Drawing. And honestly, I think it covers a lot of topics that are even beyond beginners. But I think essentially, you know, I feel like all these books end up becoming the same if you read enough of them. You know, it starts with essential shading, and then it gives you exercises. You know, pretty much starts with basic shapes, exercises. And I think the most helpful books are the books that help you build confidence, in your skills, in your drawing skills and everything. And where I think that really does it is by knowing the teacher, knowing who the person who wrote the book is, and having simple enough exercises that it's like attainable. But this is definitely, you know, beginners learning how to draw with basic shapes. It's a nice gift book because it's a hardcover, the complete beginner's guide, and it really is like it really teaches you the essentials. And sometimes you just need exercises. Sometimes you just need tips, techniques, these types of things. What's up, Dave? So sometimes you just need tips, techniques, and just simple ways to draw people. Now, this is a pretty decent one, but I think the idea that this really gives you the most is, you know, how to really simplify your objects and then work from there. This is a really great beginner's guide. Like, I would say this is like a beginner's beginner guide. Like, it's just like, this is just like the essential, like starting from scratch. You know, if you just want to learn how to draw, just the basic, most fundamental techniques of drawing, you know, outline and then getting some basic shadow and then building up a confidence level that you feel competent drawing, like even more complex pieces like this. This is an absolutely fantastic book. This is like before 101. It's like the intro to. Is there even something before 101? Like drawing 101? This will get you started real fast. And I think with all the tips and tricks that it gives you, it's pretty essential for people to draw. Let's go to another book here. We're going to put this to the side. And I want to mix these books up. I don't want to just do you know, art and drawing books, because I think what's really important when it comes to learning anything, what's really helpful, not really important, but like what's really helpful is getting into a creative mindset. And here's another book that I really want to recommend that I have on my Audible. It's called Dear Theo. Dear Theo, the autobiography of Vincent van Gogh. by Irving Stone and John Stone. So this is Dear Theo by Irving Stone and John Stone. So Dear Theo is on Audible. I think it's a great read, or a great listen, I should say, because it's one thing to read an artist's story, but I think this is a really interesting way to get into a mindset of an artist. Although, some of his stories, you don't want to like get too ingrained in your mindset with Vincent, because he had a lot of struggles, and he shares a lot of that. But I think in his early story, the early story of Dear Theo, when you start to listen to his letters, you really start to break into this mindset of like, what one artist's perspective and approach was. And he was absolutely obsessed. Imagine, his life started, he was, before he got into painting as an adult, he was an evangelical. He wanted to evangelically preach ideas to people or coal miners. And if you think about that, you got to think someone like that is incredibly passionate, incredibly committed, incredibly like just maybe a little bit overly passionate. And if you can apply that type of mindset to art or painting or drawing or whatever it is that you want to do, I think that is an incredibly powerful mindset from which to have a position. I wish the lighting was better in this room. How's the lighting here? Is that better? I gotta be up this close for the lighting to be good. All right, we can do that. So, that said, this is gonna sound funny, but having his letters being read to you in your ear, it almost made me feel not connected to Vincent, but connected to this incredibly helpful mindset. Dave asks if I've ever thought about cutting my ear off. Let's not talk about that type of stuff, Dave. This is a professional episode where I gotta go to my YouTube real quick. This is a professional episode, okay? We're actually having a serious discussion about books right now. Serious discussion. A nice, nerdy, geeky conversation about books. And I'm trying to have this set up here. Pin message. Okay. So, Dear Theo, the autobiography of Vincent van Gogh. Wonderful, wonderful book. And when it comes to like mindset, I feel like Vincent, as out of all the artists out there, has done, of course he's a very popular artist, but he's done an amazing job of like, he like documented everything through his letters. And it's so powerful to like hear that mindset, to hear that, the thought process of how obsessed he was with painting. And if you want it, whether you just like the story or idea of Vincent, or you want to become an artist and you want to paint and you want to do these things, I think it's such a great and powerful resource to have access to his letters. And that's one thought on Audible. So let's go here. This is usually a pretty highly recommended. This is a pretty highly recommended book. Highly reviewed. Alfonso Dunn, pen and ink drawing. And he says this is a simple guide, but I would say that this, like, I was in a jiu-jitsu class the other day, and the professor was trying to teach something, and he said something really interesting. Yes, mental health is important. So yes, that's important to talk about, for sure. But I was in a jiu-jitsu class the other day, and my professor was teaching something very, very basic. And then he had to stop the class, the drills multiple times, because he noticed that people were making really basic mistakes, like super, super simple, like, not rotating a wrist in a certain way. For example, that's not exactly what happened, but not rotating your wrist or arm in a certain way. And, he made this interesting comment where the thing that he thought was super basic, super simple, really wasn't. It wasn't all that basic. It wasn't super simple, and there were a lot of steps that worked into it. So although this is a simple guide, I think it's a really interesting book title, but I would say that this is not like drawing 101. I think this has some incredibly advanced techniques. And this would be a great, like, if you've gotten out, you've been drawing, you've done some exercises, and you really want to up your game, I think that this book is a great touch. Or if you have an artist that likes to draw or already draws, but their drawings really aren't, or their drawings are decent or they're good and they need to be taken to the next level. I think this is an amazing book because it gives you a lot of like one-off techniques that an advanced artist might use, which is great. Like you have like these one-off advanced techniques that yeah, they could be copied by any artist who knows how to draw, but when you start to put them all together, your drawings start to advance really quickly because these techniques are not by any means like, yes, each individual one is fairly simple, really easy to understand, really simple to understand, but in implementation, when you put it all together, you get some really advanced drawings. And that's what I love about this book. I think that this is more of like a advanced reference. It's simple. All the advanced techniques are made and explained very simply, but it's the putting them together that makes this a really advanced book. Because of course, look, everything in here, piece by piece, is fairly simple, right? You're talking about curvature, shading. He puts it into a very simple to understand methods, lighter versus darker. But I think the most valuable thing is when you start to put this all together, when you start to put all the ideas in this book together, it's when you really start to up your game. So who might that benefit from this book? I mean, if you're an artist, you probably already heard of this book. If you want to learn drawing, you've probably already seen the reviews on this book. But I don't think that, although it's a simple guide, I don't feel that it is an easy guide. And I think that anybody who is considering this book will want to have at least done a beginner's class because again, as I mentioned, the great value of this book is more of like a bit of a reference. Ross Smirnoff says his favorite artist is not insane. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's great. Like, it's great. So who is your favorite artist, Smirnoff? Because I think it's great to have positive artist references, rather than the famed and esteemed struggling mentally struggling artists. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody has their issues, but I'm definitely on the side of not over idolizing the struggle versus the talent. But anyway, look, like very advanced techniques, but with every chapter, it's all simplified. So you don't want to jump at these techniques without having ever stepped your foot outside and drawn, unless you can learn by getting thrown in. But these techniques are very advanced, and they can really help you these techniques put together are very advanced, but simplified. So it's more like you've drawn and you just want to add some new tricks or tips to your repertoire. So love this book, Pen and Ink Drawing by Alfonso Dunn. But again, it's more of I would use this for references and like just one-off practices and exercises. So that's Alfonso Dunn's Pen and Ink Drawing, a simple guide. Let's look at, this book is actually really rare. I've seen copies of it on Amazon, but I don't actually know if there's always regular copies on Amazon with this. And this is Techniques of the Great Masters of Art, and it covers all these old masters. So let's pop in right here and let's see who the old masters are. So it covers all the old masters from 1300 to 1980, the modern masters. So we've got artists like Giotto, Caravaggio, Auguste Dominique Lugre. I actually don't recognize that artist. William Turner, Gustave Courbet, Edgar Degas, Paul Cézanne, Bertha Morisot, Mary Cassatt, Paul Gauguin, And then some more modern artists: Pablo Picasso, Piet Mondrian, Salvador Dali, Roy Lichtenstein, Lucien Freud. So, lots of modern artists. So all the great, if you just want like a huge rundown of like the techniques of masters from the 1300 to modern times. This book's pretty old too, I think, from like 19, yeah, probably, let's see, I don't know the copyright date. As you can see, I've really only gotten through a quarter of this book. But this book I actually found, very fortunately, I found this book. It was like a gift. It was like a gift from the universe, this book. It is absolutely fantastic book if you want to learn painting, drawing. And here's what I think is so valuable from it. So yeah, of course it teaches you the techniques, right? Like talks about Edgar Degas and how it breaks down his paintings in each of these little sections. It breaks down Edgar Degas' paintings. If you get more advanced, we start looking at more modern art. So I think this is probably Seurat. Yep, Seurat. So we've got Seurat, and it breaks down his individual paintings. And, it even shows you like, very specific details about every single thing that they did. It talks about X-rays. Here we got Duchamp, Marcel Duchamp, even him, and like discusses his art and talks about their techniques, their ideas. And they're not like long chapters either. They're actually really quick chapters. Let's see, Duchamp is 1, 2, 3, 4, like 3 pages, right? So every artist just has like a quick 3 to 4 pages that talks about the art, shows an image, and gets you to the next idea. It's a really great rundown. But what I love about this book the most, as far as like learning and studying art, isn't, you're not going to learn how to paint necessarily, but you're going to get some amazing ideas out of this. You're going to find some remarkable ideas, and you're going to also see that a lot of these artists, as great as they are, as well known, as notorious, as successful, as much of a brand name as many of these artists are, you also find that a lot of them are human as well, right? Like you'll start to learn about why, some artists, what denotes confidence in an artist, right? Like this book talks about some of these like confident strokes and certain expressions, and these are many things that I think is looked for by art people. And if you can understand what the great artists were doing, what they were expressing, how they were doing it, and their confidence and their ability in like being flexible, changing something up, switching location. Even Vermeer, let's see, did they actually even talk about Vermeer in here? Of course they should, right? Yeah, of course. Jan Vermeer, Rembrandt, right. So even Vermeer, everyone thinks of Vermeer as this incredibly meticulous, remarkable painter, that everything was just perfect, in perfect position. But even Vermeer made changes in his paintings after the fact. So, knowing some of these facts about your favorite artists, you think about them in a certain way, and they all added their own little quirks, their own ideas, their own expressions into every single piece. And this book does an amazing job of just capturing all of that. But this book is a little bit more hard to find. What's up, Omizu? This book is a little bit more hard to find. I don't know all the possible resources. Again, I got lucky with this book. But amazing, amazing book if you want to get into art and painting. The majority of it covers painting. And there's, I would say that the diversity of art going into the time could be improved, but overall, just knowing these techniques, you're not gonna learn them as in master them just by reading this, but it is great to have a foundation from which to work from. So amazing book. Let's take a peek inside, right? So every single chapter is just a different artist, and there's probably like a few dozen artists in here. It goes over techniques, the history of the era, history of the time. Your favorite artist is insane. Oh yeah, who's that, Omizu? Who do you like the most? Who would you say is insane? Omizu. So here we go. We got Lautrec right here. It goes over the techniques of Toulouse de Lautrec. Oh, I am an insane artist. Thank you. Yes, insane in the membrane. Okay, so let's go to our next book. We're gonna swap between. We're gonna swap between. We're gonna swap between our physical books and audible books. And our next book is going to be called The Creative Act. So if you're looking for something a little bit more modern and something more tied to like creativity, I gotta adjust my timer here. Turn off my timer. Okay, here's a great book. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. So The Creative Act by Rick Rubin here. Rick Rubin, known as a very highly successful music producer. He made this book. It's a great listen. He reads it himself. But what I think is great about Rick Rubin is, he's very modern, but he talks about these ideas that have really stuck to the like timely philosophical ideas, right? And he has all these great examples about how creativity happens. And it's not like he's an authority on creativity, right? There's no real authority on creativity. But it's a powerful book. He has a lot of really wonderful ideas, and he's got a really great voice too. He's got a really chill, like just soothing voice that is just really good. So, Art in the Age of Anxiety by Paul Rhodes. Okay, I'll have to. There's another recommendation. Art in the Age of Anxiety. That sounds like a good book. What do you think about it, Omizu? Can you tell us? Can you give us a little rundown? I'll have to check that out. I'm not sure, that book title captures my attention. I'm not really focused on like, unless you've got a good pitch, unless it's totally like different. I'm not really focused on trying to learn about uh, art and anxiety. But hopefully, there's a deeper meaning to that book, or maybe if there was a different title, you could pitch me on that. But I'm not really sure if I would be sold on a book that talks about art and anxiety, because that's not my thing, right? I don't make trauma art. I don't make that type of art. So um anyway, maybe that's not what the book is about. I don't consider anxiety trauma, but you get what I mean, right? There's some people that like, there's some artists that make art that come from their anxiety, their fears. Maybe I make art from fear or whatever, but like not from that as a foundation. Um, that's not the type of art I make. I make art to reveal my conscious. All right. Anyway, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Amazing book. If this book isn't just for artists, it's for everybody. Um, it's for people who are maybe feel like they're struggling with creativity, but they just want to get some insight on creativity, whether it be for business, for your life, your relationships, your just everyday relationships, life, work, business, realizing that everything that is done that you do can be a creative act. It is a creative act. And I find this inspirational and inspiring more than just like a toolbook. It's not even a toolbook. It's just like this super subtle, inspiring book, The Creative Act. Super subtly inspiring. And it only has a 4.0 on Goodreads, but still great. So Mizu says never judge a book by its cover, but I will say I don't judge a book by its cover, even as difficult as that is, as difficult as it is to not judge things by their cover. I have to say it's hard, and there's only one book, my favorite book of all time, that has the best cover. Because of the title. And that is this book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. It doesn't matter what field you work in, whether it be finance, banking, art, athletics, family relationships, dating, maybe that's your most expert field. I don't know. Cooking, whatever that is, this is the greatest book cover and title on the entire planet because not only does it get straight to the point on the cover, this is one of those books. I don't think the cover design is all that great. It's not a great cover design. It's whatever. This guy's riding his private jet, right? Like, that's cool. That's great and all. But it's almost as if he gives away the secret in the book or on the cover. You don't need to even read the book. That's how good the cover is. That's how great the title on the cover is. You don't even need to read the book to get to the core of what this person is trying to say. There's no like secret, um there's no like, well, what how do you do this? It's just become obsessed. And becoming obsessed has pretty much helped me with anything I've wanted to do decent at. I mean, feel like becoming obsessed helped me make my first sales in painting. Becoming obsessed helped me, you know, make my first sales in car sales. Becoming obsessed helped me grow a YouTube channel. So helped me find booking acting jobs and stuff like that. So being obsessed or be average, like the entire, this is one of those books where it's like you don't even need to read it. It's helpful to listen to it, but no matter what field you're in, becoming obsessed helped me finish my first marathon, 2 marathons. It's one of those things where the answer is right in the title. That's why this is such a powerful title. And that's why, Omizu, when you say the book title, Art in the Age of Anxiety, it just doesn't appeal to me because in my mind, it's about anxiety. And that's not really that is not what I focus on. I'm not a therapist. I don't help people like through anxiety. That's not what I do. Right. So, I'm not saying not to have the empathy for people with anxiety. I'm not saying uh, to like, in a non-art world to not consider it. But as far as what I do, that's the only reason why that book doesn't appeal to me. So feel free to pitch me on the book. I'm open to hearing about it. But I just feel like, I don't know, just art in the age of anxiety. It's just not like a book title that appeals to me. I don't want to learn about more ways to have anxiety, right? So, I don't want to put that stuff into people's head. This is there. If you want to get good at something, or if you want to improve at something, or if you just want to like, sell more paintings, then be obsessed or be average. The answer is in the title. It's a beautiful thing. Um, So amazing, amazing, very, very motivational, very inspiring. You don't even have to read it. Just having it like on your shelf and knowing that like if I'm ever struggling, and I'm like, why am I not painting better, or why is my YouTube channel not growing, or why is why whatever. I think I would like really this was like an anchoring idea for me is, am I being obsessed enough? Am I putting enough time, energy? Am I being obsessed enough? Am I being obsessed enough with all these things? So, um, yeah, I mean, no matter what you're being in, family, relationships, self, job, career, all these things, if you can be obsessed enough, I think you can at least be above average in it. Because it doesn't overpromise, right? There's some books that overpromise. It would like overpromise. It would be like be obsessed and become the greatest, right? That's not what it's about. It's being obsessed and just going a little bit above average. And honestly, that is saying a lot though, because average is what 80%. 80% of the world. Average is not 50%. 50% is like middle. The median, but average is like somewhere above median, I think. Well, I guess I don't want to get too technical on the math there, but you get what I mean. Like average is the majority, right? Average is the majority taken into like account, not a bottom 50%, maybe the top 51%, but uh, average. Like, do you really just want to be average at anything? Do you want to do anything? If you want to do something great, good, at least good, at least get good, right? That's all it promises is if you become obsessed, you're not going to be average. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna go on to our next book. So that's an inspiring book. So Mizu says, yeah. So all right, you know what? Since we're here, let's look at this book. I honestly, Omizu, the title of that book, I didn't say this earlier, but the title of the book just makes me upset. Art in the Age of Anxiety. Like, why do I want to learn more about? I mean, again, I don't have this the issue of that I really want to deal with, or that I feel like I even need to deal with. So it kind of annoys me. Art in the Age of Anxiety, that someone wants to pitch me or tell me about more anxiety in the world. I don't like that idea. It kind of it does irk me. So, but since Omizu recommended it, I do want to look it up. Art in the Age of Anxiety and see what it's about. Like, it annoys me when some people say, "Oh, you must be nervous right now." No, no, don't, try to gaslight me into into feeling nervous. And this is like when I had my first art show or whatever. It's like, "You must be nervous, right?" No. Screw you. I am my own thoughts. All right. Yeah, people see art as a way to cope ever since art therapy came into being. Maybe art is a way for me to cope in some sense. But let's see, groundbreaking analysis of artistic modernism, from philosophical to technical roots in the 18th century to the Genesis, incisive commentary on the work of David, Cezanne, Picasso, Bills. Why and how, under pressure from Marxist ideology, painting took directions which led to abstraction. The author's own artistic adventures are the backdrop for explorations of fundamental aspects of painting. All right, well, look, honestly, so I'm reading the synopsis of Art in an Age of Anxiety. The only way I'll read this book is if the author changes the title. If Paul Rhodes writes this book but changes the title to something like less like anxious, I'd be down to read it. Only because Omizu recommended it. But just like I don't want to get all negative, but I just can't stand the title. Art in the Age of Anxiety. Well, and honestly, like the book overview doesn't sound anything like it has to do with art in the age of anxiety. But I just can't stand that title. Art in the Age of Anxiety. Like I mean, I kind of get it too. It might be poking fun at like modern times, and people are anxious. I get it, but I don't want to read a book about it. I don't feel like it's a thing that I really want to ingrain myself more into, Art, yes. Art, 100%. I mean, if he changed the title, if this type, Paul Rhodes, consider this a consultation. This book title does not appeal to me whatsoever. If you change this book title to something like, I don't know, what would I like? I haven't even dove in, but like the Genesis of contemporary art. There you go. The Genesis of contemporary art. I would read that. That would be dang cool. But anyway, like like there's nothing in here that even talks about why it's talking about anxiety. I like this just it's just bad karma there, I feel. Or not bad karma, but like kind of like putting yourself in that place. I'm very big on the law of attraction and the physical idea. Well, changing the title doesn't affect what it's already about, but I don't know what it's about. But down here it's saying that it's about neoclassicism, pop art, commentary, how under pressure from Marxist ideology, whatever. It doesn't mention anything about anxiety. It has no hint to it. So why is that in the title? And if the word anxiety is in a title, I don't need a therapy book about art and anxiety. Again, like it's maybe there's a disconnect in what the title is and what's in the book, but I think the title sucks. So that's why I'm not gonna read it. Um, I know earlier I was trying to be nice, but just like I'm really big on law of attraction and focusing on what you want out of life, focusing on these things that that are keeping your attention on the things that matter to you, right? And focusing on art in an age of anxiety just does not appeal to me. Maybe it'll help me relate more to more people. Maybe it'll help me be more relatable, I guess, if I appeal to people's anxieties and I maybe share a story of being anxious and use that as a story. But I don't like to do that. So I am getting way too worked up. Book title is very important. A book title is very, very important. It is, like I said, I compared the last book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. That is, oh, well, I can't get rid of this, but this has definitely shown my, never mind, I don't want to. What is it shown? What have people seen? I'm getting worked up. This is very important because I went from going from a title that's like absolutely brilliant, a title that's like absolutely brilliant, to a title that like I don't know, a title that gives you the answers, gives you like a way from which to work, a title that helps you, find good balance in your life, right? To a title that doesn't. You're saying that this does not reflect what's in the book. The synopsis is just a synopsis. It's just a cover. But coming from that book and having this like contrasting view of like finding answers in life to yeah, well, the title makes you cringe. Let's agree to that, and I'm gonna stop ranting about this book. This is my book criticism. Okay, enough about that. I could go on and on about book titles. Book titles are important. I've written a dozen books, but only like 6 of them are out on Amazon still. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the titles. And maybe my titles suck too. And if my book titles sucked, I would hope that someone told me and was like, "Dude, change your book title and you will sell more books." If someone said that and even gave me a recommendation, I would love them for it. But that title is just just it annoys me. All right. That said, it very much annoys me. I feel there's more to it than just the title. You're right. You're right. I feel there's more to it than just the title of the book. Yes. Well, anyway, all right. So let's go on to some more books. French painting. I don't know. I picked this book up because I thought it was Techniques of the Great Masters. They pretty much look the same, but this isn't like a. This is more of just a like coffee table book, an art coffee table book. Yeah, this is definitely more of an art coffee table book. I don't feel like as I read this, it's like very in depth into the history, almost in like a textbook kind of way, maybe a little bit too scholarly. And I don't like books that are like overly scholarly because they get kind of boring, and it's not like bite sized like the great techniques of the great masters. But it does have some great information if you read into it, or it's too investigative, I guess. It might be a little too investigative. But I actually grabbed this book not because I thought it was a different book. So it's a good coffee table book. All right, so Omizu and I have had a heated discussion. You're writing a book. It's called "Buy This Book and Get Super Rich." Brian Keats is writing that book. Well, there you go. That's a powerful book. I love that title. I'd buy it. I would buy it. All right, so this is probably one of the most highest recommended uh, series collection of books. I have almost all of them except for maybe like one. He's got like 10, I think. So Andy Loomis, I'm only going to share this too because it's a little collection. So Andrew Loomis. Let's just pull out Drawing the Head and Hands. So Andrew Loomis, iconic commercial artist, and this is a drawing book. I have like 7 of his. I don't know if he has 8 or 10, but if you want to learn to draw, this is a great way to start because Andy Loomis, he's no longer around, but he does a great job teaching. He's got great writing skills. There's books that have a lot of writing and explanation and complicated explanations, but Andy Loomis came from advertising, and I think that really reflects in his books because his writing feels as if it's been written by a copywriter. And if you're not familiar with copywriting, for lack of a better term, is like simplified language to like its core elements. And when you read a book that feels as if it was written by someone who knows how to write good ads, an ad person, it's much easier to consume. It's so much easier to digest, understand, consume, learn from. And it's interesting, it's engaging. And you could tell that Andrew Loomis wasn't just a talented artist, but either he had someone write this for him, an ad person, or he wrote this himself, because I feel like every person who does commercial art probably had some level of like copywriting training, writing for ads. And his words, they just flow. They sell you on ideas. And you can really tell his writing style it makes it very easy to learn. But you're here for learning how to draw, right? Not necessarily the writing. But there are some books that are really dense in writing, some books that are just super dense in writing, and they can get really confusing, and they get so in depth about anatomy, like, oh well, the anatomical structure of the skull is connected to the membrane tissue of the rear skull cervical number 1 bone that is attached to the amygdala through a nervous system. There's some books that get so in depth into the anatomy that you just get lost, right? You just get lost, and then you zone out, like you probably just did as I was saying all that, and you zone out. But when you read like an elegant book that also has really great information, it tells you proportions and ways to draw things with these really simple basic exercises. And I will say there's a learning curve. You won't get it, you probably won't get it right just by, learning this exactly the first try. But if you practice long enough, you will learn. And again, it helps to have good instruction. Some books just do not have good instruction. And some books just don't have good instruction. And when you have good instruction, easy to understand ways of learning, proportions of the schoolboy's head, proportions of the schoolgirl's head, it goes into different proportions. You got a section about the hands, and it talks about drawing baby hands versus adult hands. And although it gets into anatomy a little bit, it's like super simplified, super basic. You don't need to memorize all the joints and the bones. It keeps it really simple. And all of his books are like this. All of Andrew Loomis's books are like this. Drawing the Head and Hands. But Drawing the Head and Hands, he has a bunch more. This is figure drawing. I got one over here. It's called Creative Illustration. So really, if you want to get into illustration, I think this is great. But making commercial art is, I think, the key, right? Like if you want to make art for like graphic designs or companies, and honestly, he did it at a time when I think most ads were made by drawing or painting. So like, comic strips and like magazines in the 70s and 80s. So, that's not really popular today, but at least you get the aesthetic, you get the feel, you can get a classic understanding of, how he might have studied. And he actually gives some good business tips too. I don't know necessarily in this one. Let's see. He usually has like a letters to people in the back. So there's a farewell to the reader. Okay, this book doesn't have it. I don't know which book does. I think it's Creative Illustration, but he actually gives business tips in his Creative Illustration book. You know what? I have it right here. I wasn't planning on sharing it because it's so clunky. It's a really big book, but let's do it anyway since we are here. Ooh, it's a very clunky book. You can see it's much thicker, and let's go starting from the back. Here we go. See. So he talks in these chapters. He's like got a business section back here, which is great. It's nice to have a business section. So look, it's got an entire business section. Creative illustration is a good one if you want to do illustration. But I think you still need the other fundamentals like the hands, the heads, figures. And then, this is a great way because this starts to move into color theory, composition, a lot of really more complex things that once you start to learn to put things together. But he's got a lot of great business tips too. There's not too many books that give you a rundown on business. Now, again, I'm sure that some of this is outdated, right? Like how to apply. Oh, no. Well, I mean, some of these ideas are fundamental, but as far as like making magazine ads go, right? Photography, is probably way bigger than traditional illustration. Digital art is probably used more than traditional illustration, but at least you get an idea of like how somebody might move into business, what people might expect in composition. I don't work in this field. I don't work in advertising, or maybe I do because I'm making these videos. But what do the magazines want? You get an idea of the business, right? What do magazines want? And there's not a lot of art books that actually go into the business, right? A lot of art books just show you the technique. But if you find a working artist that works in commercial art that will give you the tips like this, Andrew Loomis is a great one. Of course, I mean, this means there's an opportunity for a modern artist or a living artist, a contemporary artist who does commercial art to share a book about their views on breaking in too. The skills are here, right? The skills are here, but just bringing the two together, easy to read instructions with great tutorials, with a nice quarter of a book that teaches good business fundamentals, lessons, career ideas. If you could do that, I mean, you got something going. You'll be the next Andrew Loomis, and he's a highly reputable. Well, you'd have to be Andrew Loomis first and then write the books. I don't think you could write the books and then be Andrew Loomis. Oh wait, this book needs to go. All right, well, I think I offended Omizu by. I feel like, did Omizu ghostwrite that book? I feel like does he know Paul? Because I feel like that affected him deep down. I don't know. Is it weird to get a sense of people's feelings through the screen, through the internet? All right, so that was figure drawing for all it's worth. I'm actually going to keep this up here because his collection of books are just so iconic. I'm going to start putting the other ones away, but let's see. So these books aren't here for the lessons that you learn as much as it is, I think it's really valuable to find books from your favorite artists. If you really want to learn art, find books from your favorite artists. And this is going to sound controversial, but find books from your favorite artists and copy them. Just copy them. Just learn their style. Take a photo of theirs and copy them, or like listen to their bios and try to get into their mindset. Basquiat's a great one. I mean, Basquiat's really popular right now, and I'm sure he'll be popular for a long time, and he's been popular. But learning the autobiographies, the real true stories of some of these artists is very helpful from an art perspective, because there's always like the myth. Omizu's crying. Uh, so I don't know. Something tells me that Omizu either ghost wrote it, which I guess we should keep that a secret, right? He didn't ghost write anything. That he either ghost wrote or he knows Paul personally. But if that's the case, I don't know. We'll never know. The world will never know. Who is Paul Rhodes? Is he like a Banksy figure? Let's turn Paul Rhodes into a Banksy, if he is a real person. I mean, I've ghostwritten books before, so, or under a different pen name. Those books are still on Amazon too, but I won't share which books those are. Back to this. So, I mean, I don't really need to show this book, but it's more so, I mean, these are high quality books. Taschen, right? Taschen makes some amazing high quality books. We all know Taschen if you've ever bought an art book for a friend. Great gifts, great high quality books that you've got different versions. But I just love getting books from my favorite artists because it really tells you about the myth versus the truth of their stories. And I think that's important, right? I think every artist has to have mythology about them, because without the mythology, the world will not be in awe, will not be inspired. They could be, but there needs to be some mythology. And then, like, if you dig a little deeper, it's nice to find the truth. And I think as artists, aren't we always seeking truth, right? Trying to find the truth of, the idea that we all see Vincent as like this super poor, struggling person who had horrible mental health issues, and like, it's almost idolized. But at the same time, yes, he had mental health issues, but he also had tons and tons of support from his brother who owned a gallery. There's a lot of artists that might feel like they have to struggle, they have to go through these challenges, but they're missing this whole element of having a relationship with a gallery, right? Which is huge, because his brother did a great job of keeping an archive of his artwork, keeping it alongside people like Lautrec and Seurat and Monet, and that really helps to elevate. If you can get your artwork into a show with Damien Hirst, that's going to elevate your artwork. If you get your art into a show with Yayoi Kusama, I think her name is, that's going to elevate your artwork. If you get your artwork into a show with any David Hockney, that's going to elevate your artwork. So, that's the thing is, I think that they kind of miss the story. They think of Vincent as this guy who nobody really, he's just this guy. But he was painting alongside some of the greatest artists that have ever lived. Paul Gauguin, right? He had access to paintings and prints by Claude Monet. And we're talking about the 1800s when printing was popular, but Amazon didn't just ship it to your door. You actually had to go to a gallery and look at the work. You couldn't see photos online. You had to actually go and look for these pieces and collect them. So, he painted alongside Paul Gauguin, Toulouse-Lautrec. His artwork was featured alongside Claude Monet. And, sadly, it was just before the end of his life, he got accepted into a wonderful solo show, very respectable, reputable solo show, and then he passed away. But he wasn't just, sitting around with his problems. He was painting. And maybe you could even say that painting, we can't really speak for exactly what he was dealing with. And although he does document a lot of it in his art, but we could say that even painting was his escape, right? Or was his way of disconnecting from his problems. So really powerful to know the truth. And I guess even the truth is quite a lot of opinion, but same thing. Basquiat, amazing story. He struggled a lot, but at the same time, as I've been told, right? I didn't actually read this in here, but knowing the story of Basquiat, hearing about him and how he just happened to see Andrew Warhol and then sold him a postcard. Does that really work? Maybe not. We'll never know. But the truth of that is that he didn't actually do that. So, according to sources. But anyway, it's good to know the truth, right? You don't need to knock on the door of the Taschen, the CEO of Taschen, and try to sell them a postcard. So, let's do this. Another drawing book. Another drawing book. This is I lost the cover for this book. I've since lost the cover for this book. But Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. What I love about this book, as far as drawing goes, what I love about this book as far as drawing goes, her book was a little unpopular because all the scientists, the super brain scientists out there, do not like this idea of the two separate brains for two separate activities, because humans use all of their brains, right? We use all of our brains. Maybe not all at the same time, but we use all of our brains. And she drew a lot of controversy with this title with all the scientists and people that are really stuck on that idea. But I love this book. Great, amazing tutorials and lessons in it. Drawing on the right side of the brain. So whether you believe in this idea or how much you believe in the idea that right side creativity, left side logic, whatever, this book is just loosely about this idea. It's kind of taking on the idea, but not overly scientific, right? It gets into science a little bit, but what's really helpful is all of the exercises. So earlier I said this Alfonso Dunn book. Let's look at a comparison here. So Alfonso Dunn. Okay, let's flip this a little bit. And that move. Okay, so earlier we were talking about this Alfonso Dunn. Let's compare and contrast these two books here as far as learning how to draw goes. So Alfonso Dunn versus Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I said Alfonso Dunn's book is great. It's called A Simple Guide, and I think it's great, but more so as a reference. So if you want to go to shading, you go to the shading references. If you want to focus on trees or textures, then you go to the texture section. If you want to figure out landscape, go to the landscape section. He's got a lot, but it's not super in-depth tutorials on each individual thing, but it's great if you've been drawing for a little bit and you just want to find some new ideas and techniques and maybe even loosen up a little bit in your drawings. He's great. Where I think this is also, both books work well. This is not a book on these quick reference book tips and techniques. I would go to this book if you just needed some exercises to open up your creativity a little bit. Open up your creativity a little bit. Some exercises that'll trick your brain. Here's one of my favorite exercises from this book. Let's see if I can find it right now. Where is that book? Okay, so here's a really fun exercise. Look at this. This book is right side up. This is a drawing that Picasso did, but it's upside down. And this is probably my favorite exercise in the whole book, even though I've only been through about half of it. But, the exercise is just to copy Pablo Picasso's drawing upside down. And this exercise alone, I feel, is one of the most powerful ones, because it forces you to study a drawing or study a subject and draw it, but it trains your eye. It trains your idea, because if you turn this right side up, you're gonna draw it and you're gonna look at it and you're gonna be like, oh well, his glasses are supposed to look like this, and his fingers are supposed to be a certain way, and his jacket, well, I don't understand why Picasso drew a jacket like this, so I'm going to draw it my own way. But when you turn it upside down, and this is the fundamental idea of this chapter, when you turn it upside down and you draw it, you're going to get an entirely new experience, because you can't fill in those blanks as easily. You can't analyze every single detail and put your own interpretation into it. So you get the benefit of drawing upside down. You can practice this with anything. And she's probably not the first person to come up with this, but she has tons of exercises in this book of a similar fashion. Now, again, this is my favorite. You can do this anywhere, but there's so many more. So whereas Alfonso Dunn comes with these nice, quick reference techniques, drawing on the right side of the brain, whether you're teaching, you're learning, you just need some new ideas to like spark some new connections, neurons in your brain for drawing. This is the book. Get those neuronal connections. Betty Edwards, like, that's what the exercises do, I think, is, I know we're talking about neurons and stuff and just talking about a brain. It's not totally connected, but I think just having different exercises, different ways to practice your creativity, different ways to see, learn, I mean, that's enough to really spark some new ideas, some new levels of creativity, some new inspiration to draw, because drawing, if you've lost the excitement in drawing, sometimes you just need new ways to practice. And this book has tons of new ways. I'd say at least a few dozen different exercises that you can play with. A few dozen. I don't know exactly how many, but they're also step by step. So she does go in a little bit more detail. I'm not usually a big fan of books that spend too much time explaining. Like, I would love for her to have a condensed book that was just like, this is the exercise, now do it. But at the same time, it also does help to have this as the main guide. And as the main guide, it's like, she breaks down the science. She breaks down the explanation of why it works, how it works. I mean, that's like true teaching. If you want like a teacher in a book, this is great, because it explains to you in detail. If you have lots of questions like, oh, well, why does this work? Why do I have to do it this way? How does that work? If you have all those questions, that's great. This is very helpful. But I would have liked the book that was more condensed. As far as me personally, that's like, it's just a little booklet with the exercises. Do it or don't. That's it. And if I want to know why, then this is it. But this book does it is a little bit challenging to find where it separates exercises, right? It does make it a little bit hard to find. It's not as like, bullet pointed, page by page, chapter by chapter, as some of the other books that I've enjoyed. But it's a great book, great reference. I think it's great for teachers looking for exercises. Honestly, this could be like a teaching manual right here. If I was Betty Edwards, and I'm sure, she probably does it. Like, she teaches classes out here in Los Angeles. I haven't been to them. She's a little far away. She's like south of Los Angeles. But if I had to learn, she could probably come up with her own teaching system just from this book as like the main idea. But Betty Edwards, great book. Let's go on. Let's move on. Betty Edwards, amazing book. And it comes with a beautiful book cover. That one was just a plain because I lost the cover. I lose my covers. Here's a book I got yesterday. And I love this because it's contemporary. It's modern. The artists, I think, are mostly still alive. And it's great because I don't recognize any of these artists' names. Kara Walker, Tony Kushner, Roz Chast, Moses Semney, Sofia Coppola, I know. Stephen Sondheim, that's familiar. Maria de Los Angeles, don't recognize that one. Thomas Bartlett, Twyla. Gregory Crutzen, David Mendel, Samin Nosrat, Wesley Morris, Ira Glass. Yeah, so I don't recognize most of these names. But they're all artists, I can assume. And so this book is formatted in, so what's the work of art about? You have to read the intro to really get it. But it's basically how the evolution of art from each artist's perspective. So he does all of these different interviews. Yuck! I don't know what that is. I have 6 cats right now, and they're 4 cats that we own, and then 2 cats that we're taking care of. But what I love about this book, the work of art, how something comes from nothing by Adam Moss, is he does a great job interviewing a bunch of artists about their creative process. And I think it's so powerful. He really explains. I mean, I definitely agree with him on everything that he says in the introduction. But how an idea evolves, right, from something so simple to suddenly becoming a much more significant and well-known art piece, from architects to filmmakers, screenwriters, journals. I mean, there's just something's been my eye over here. What's in my eye? Dust. Of course, it's dust, probably. Anyway, it's been very dusty in LA lately because there's like fires and fireworks since July, and it's getting hot, so there's a lot of dust in the air. Everything's very dry, but it's not as hot as some places. But anyway, this book I'm just getting into. I haven't really gotten too far into it. I haven't fully, I don't have the Audible, so I don't listen to it all either. But I can already, like, either way, whether this is a coffee table book, beautiful, artsy coffee table book, or whether you actually know these artists or you don't know these artists, and you want to like hear what they have to say about their process, their creative efforts, or you just want to hear, just like get insight that might help you find more of your creativity. I think this book is a great choice. And again, I haven't fully dove into it. I've only gotten through the first few chapters, but it caught my attention. It has caught my attention, just this idea alone of how this creativity builds into something. So I'm actually excited to get through this book. Now, The Ultimate Berg, I don't know how the name's actually pronounced, but Berg, classical drawing book. What I love about this book is there's absolutely no words, no tutorial on how to draw, no explanation. Just dive in. Like, that's how simplified it is. No words, no tutorials, no explanations about anatomy, no complex explanation on what you need to do, no hand-holding on any of this. The only determining factor, if this is the type of learning that appeals to you, and this doesn't appeal to everybody. Some people need, some more guidance. Some people need more explanation. But with this book, I mean, the only critique that you really need, the only grade that's given is your grade of yourself on how close your drawing is to the reference to the reference drawing. That's it. Like, how great is that, right? Like, you can learn to draw without a teacher, without and by the way, none of this is a replacement for great mentorship. Okay, I'm not saying that any of this will replace practice. None of this will replace mentorship, teaching. I've had a lot of mentors and art teachers, mostly in digital art. I started in digital art, where I learned like the fundamentals, learning tools and everything. Just clean my eye up. Might have to take a break with my eye in a second. But nothing will replace any of that, right? Nothing will replace good critique, conversations with other artists that might share thoughts on your work, and of course, I think at the end of it is also your self-critique. And I think this book is great in that, and there are teachers that actually teach this, but I think most importantly, if you're self-motivated, if you are capable of just taking an image, which everyone is capable of this. If you're capable of just taking this image and just copying it, and it might not be good. I'm not saying you're capable of doing it well, but just capable. Just being able to grab a pen and paper or pencil and paper and just making an attempt, an effort to copy it. And you do that enough times, and it starts easy enough, right? It starts with ears and eyes and just super basic designs. And then over time you kind of just like learn through the basic idea. You just learn by letting it build up eventually to more and more complex pieces. Just building up and building up. And that's how it works. And it's that easy. Like this is the ultimate. Charles Berg, he's a guy that made a this course, not this specific book. This book I believe is a reprint. I think the actual original book is actually in the public domain, but I like having a physical copy, so I picked this up. But um, this was originally made in the 1800s, so they have a more aesthetic classical taste. It's a great way to learn classical tastes, but it's just one way of drawing. This might not appeal to everybody, but it's just one way of drawing that's very classical. And you're not drawing from life, you're drawing from casts. And what's wonderful about it is that, like, this is the ultimate in communication, in visual communication. Because if you're drawing, if you're painting, you're probably a visual learner. You probably have like you love the visuals, right? You love the visual element of things. And you probably learn visually, right? Not always by reading text. And again, aside from mentorship, we're talking about books right now. Maybe you don't learn from text. Maybe you don't learn from audio. This is it. This is just if you don't learn from text or audio, this is it. Just copy this, practice it, try it, do it yourself, and then when you're done, all you need to do is compare. And if you're close, then you're good. That's it, right? Like that's it's just so simple. I'm talking more about this book than I need to because I thought for a second I might just close it, talk about it, and then done. But I really love the book. The way Charles Berg designed his lessons, starting from the most simplest of intuitive, of simple drawings that you could trace if you needed to, up to incredibly advanced figures, and it shows you you don't need to know. You don't need an explanation how to draw this. You don't need an explanation of how to draw this. You don't need an explanation of how to draw this. You don't really need an explanation of how to copy this. You just do it. And then by the time you get to these more advanced pieces, I mean, you pretty much already have an idea of how to format, how to break it down into your drawings. So, really great book. I like it a lot. I love it. I love this course. I've gone through some of it a couple times. But here's how I discovered it. This is where it really gets interesting, why this is a low-key, a secret weapon of learning how to draw. So the way I discovered the Berg's drawing program, someone told me about it, but I didn't really understand the significance of it until I was reading a book on drawing that was about Vincent van Gogh's drawings, and it was talking about his drawings, and supposedly he studied Berg's course 3 times. He went through everything 3 times, and what I find so fascinating is you actually see in his letters to his brother, Vincent's letters to his brother, that he was actually copying some of the drawings into the letters to his brother. And I find that really insightful. It's kind of like uncovering this mystery or these layers of secrets of Vincent. So that was interesting to me. I'm a very big fan of Vincent's work, but I find it very insightful to know where the artist came from, right? What he studied, and it was Berg. And here's another fun little reveal. If you like Vincent van Gogh or Vincent van Gogh or Vincent van Gogh, as the British call him, here's the other fun fact: is that his brother's company, Goupil AC, which is French for something, was the original publisher of these books. What visionaries! These people, the Van Goghs, the Van Goghs had vision, had amazing vision to think long term enough that, I wonder if they were in cahoots in a way. Vincent was like, oh, well, my brother's company is publishing this book, so I must be an arbiter and an evangelist of this material. I wonder if he actually thought that, or whether it was just a coincidence that he loved the material. But he went through it 3 times, and I don't know how popular Berg was, but when you tie these pieces together, you see art. I think, at least from that era, or Vincent's perspective, is not just like this guy, struggling guy or passionate guy, sitting and drawing and painting by himself, or like people making fun of him, kicking him out or whatever. You see this story, but you see it beyond that to more of this business minded, this vision that him and his brother probably had as far as art goes. His brother's archiving of his letters, archiving of his drawings, archiving of his artwork, even though he didn't really sell many. I believe that Vincent sold at least 2 paintings. The myth says that he sold one, but I believe that he sold at least 2, and he bartered many more, which I consider selling. So, I know the myth that he only sold one helps to raise prices, but I think he sold more. So I'm sticking to that story. But anyway, Vincent, his brother's company, art gallery, art dealer, published the original Berg drawing courses. And Vincent, I mean, just two together, you tie these pieces together and you're like, wow, brilliant. Coming together, marketing the books that your company is selling while being a great artist. Well, he wasn't really respected at the time, but, while doing all the art and archiving everything. I think at a more foundational business perspective level, right? It all comes together. Having the vision and then putting that all together. So that they were a company. They were a company there, and I think it helps to from a painting or an art perspective or creative perspective to have a vision beyond your painting, right? Have a vision beyond just the artwork. If you can partner with someone to market their books, right? If you have a brother or family member in a gallery, even better. People say that that's like nepotism nowadays, but who cares? Like, I'm not, like, whatever. You got to use every single tool that you have. If you can make a connection with the gallery to advertise their books, I mean, even if you don't have nepotism, right? Like, there's so many opportunities today where, and by the way, when I say nepotism as related to Vincent, I mean, his brother owned or ran a gallery or art dealer that his uncle and I think his grandpa started. So, they're not a traditional like story of a nepo kids, but they had foundations, and I think it's important to recognize that. Where if you don't have those foundations, find them, right? That's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm here on Amazon Live talking about these books. You could buy them right now. If you go ahead and want to learn how to draw, you can go ahead and tap that button to check out the Blueberry drawing books. But yeah, teaming up with Amazon as an Amazon associate. That's what I'm doing right now. Or you can check out a free Audible trial membership this month and access a massive library of audiobooks that can teach you drawing, that you could get bios from, that you can, well, they won't teach you drawing, technically, but you'll get a lot of great ideas out of them. You'll be able to connect with some amazing, talented artist biographies, and that'll help you get into a mindset, a powerful mindset that can help you learn to draw and probably go anywhere. Or if you're just an art history lover, then check out Audible Plus free trial membership. Sometimes listening to the stories be told is better than reading, because the book, of course, the books are always great because you always have the images in the books, and that's really important. So you want to get the books, but also sometimes having a voice, a storyteller, explain the stories to you, that's very helpful too. So, and you can only get that with Audible Plus free trial memberships. Well, not just free trial memberships. You might have to get a regular membership at some point, but yeah, check that out. Amazon Audible memberships, I highly recommend it. I get I personally get 2 Audible credits a month, which helps fuel my obsession, my healthy, some might consider unhealthy obsession with art and drawing and painting and things. Content creation. But yeah, by the way, if you're watching on Amazon Live, you probably get it. You probably get what I'm doing, right? That I'm making these live streams about these books. and you can actually purchase them below. But if you're on YouTube, this is more than just a review. This is, I think if you're watching from YouTube, have this message like, get everything you can out of what you got. So there you go. Whew. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more books to go. All right. Well, this is another one of those books. It's like, find books from your favorite artist. You can find any books from your favorite artist and learn from them. This book specifically is actually really good. I love the images in here. They're good sizes. But I'm not going to go too in depth about my love for Vincent's painting style and his history. I don't need to repeat that. Here's a great book. Now, it's a little dusty. I haven't used this book in a while. Let's use this. Let's just use my shirt, my painting shirt. Here we go. This is a great coffee table book, but it's also a great tutorial book. And I want to say this. This is not a book for beginners. It says Classical Painting Atelier, Contemporary Guide to Traditional Studio Practice, but this is by far not an entry-level book. But this book is totally enough to tell you some advanced techniques. And when I say advanced techniques, I mean like, how to do super fine art painting. And I would say like this level, the super classical style, right? The atelier style, the super fine art classical style that we all know and recognize. That's what you're getting from this book. And this is, again, by far not a book that you're going to actually learn how to do this from. You're still going to want a mentor. You're still going to want a teacher. You're going to want lots and lots of practice. So she does have an atelier that she talks about. But where I think, even if you're not an advanced artist, advanced painter, and lots of these techniques are really hard to achieve if you're not, learning from the right sources. In fact, I don't even go for these techniques, but there are some stuff that I picked up from it, like composition. I love the composition chapter. Very, very much chapter 1. Let's go into here. It talks about practice, exercise, basic techniques, doing master copy painting, using a grid, right? Classical standard everyday things that have been taught for hundreds of years, right? The classical method of painting. This grid system. This has been used for hundreds of years. This is just the classic atelier style, hundreds of years, monochromatic painting. It tells you that that's what you do. I think she gives away all the secrets, right? All the techniques, the methods, but I feel like Joey from Friends right now. Or is it Joey that does that? I'm sure it's Joey. What's he up to right now? I don't know his name, but look, you're not gonna learn to do the paintings like this overnight. Like, these are very stylized. It's very classical atelier style. You really need a mentor for this, a teacher. And I feel like, I'll even be honest, I'm probably not the most credible person to pitch this book. Because, as far as atelier work goes, it's a very specific style of study. It's a very specific way. I don't use these techniques. I don't use a grid method. I don't do monochromatic studies for the most part. I usually paint, either plein air or more abstractly. So I don't really use the techniques in this book, but where I think it really shines, and why I think it's very helpful, if you have been painting for a while, it's a great advanced book. Where I think this is really helpful is learning the classical methods that have been tried and tested throughout time. And you can learn some good techniques, like, this contrast, classic, they call it Caravaggio or tenebrism or something, creating the contrast around your figure. right? Just these simple contrasts can create such a powerful difference. But I think the most valuable one that any artist can start putting to action right away, whether you're a beginner or not, is the very first chapter on composition, or chapter 2. Chapter 2 is composition. Chapter 2 is composition, and like composition is something anybody can do, right? You can compose objects in a space that you eventually want to paint. So she goes a little bit into detail on the compositional lines, and some people actually argue that, you know, composition and these like the rule of thirds and the golden ratio and all these things is kind of BS. Some people actually say that. You know, like look at all these lines. Is all that lines necessary? And then, you know, you can analyze the great works of the masters and sacred geometry. By the way, Omizu was talking about a book about sacred geometry. I actually bought it. I got it as a physical copy. So I personally believe in, you know, the value of compositional lines and like geometry and artwork and how that works. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And, you know, just going over just classical composition, like you could analyze this and, you know, figure it out and just talk about how brilliant the artist is. But I think ultimately where the value comes from is just having a guide, right? Whether you believe in this visual appeal of the science of like composition, like the lines, right? Where should the eye sit on a painting? What should be put where, right? Even if whether you believe in that or not, and you choose to compose a painting or drawing as opposed to just believing that anything could go anywhere and still make it look good. And some people do that on purpose, right? Like you see it in some of Salvador Dali's paintings where he purposely makes things that are a little bit off, that throw off the eye, that make the composition look weird and funny. But that's because he knows the rules, I think. He knows the rules of composition, he purposely does it. But back to this idea, whether you believe that these lines actually mean anything or not, I think the most helpful thing for the artist from this book is, I think the most valuable thing about learning composition is that there's something to help guide you. So you're not just like starting from, you know, if you start from just a blank canvas, that could be so intimidating. And then you could be like, oh, well, I could put this head here, or I could put this head here, or I should put this dog here. And there's still planning involved, but if you have some basic rules, if you know some basic geometry, or, you know, you at least have a belief in an idea that this is a potentially elegant way to organize objects within a painting, you're going to be better off. It's going to be easier to not make the painting, but to at least get that first step of arranging things. And if that ever stops you, I mean, just getting a book on composition, this book is great. That's going to be helpful. But other than that, I think the rest of this book is really just about like exercises, like, oh, monochromatic painting, or yeah, practices and monochrome exercises. And let's see, I should probably go through this book again. It's really beautiful. Like these are very, very beautiful paintings. The classical method, right? We're losing this. We are losing these classical methods of approach to painting beautifully. And you know, as the way I paint, of course, is very different. I can learn a thing or two. I think it's helpful to have your own style, but also to learn the classics. So, you know, when I did train and do stuff like this, it was only through digital painting. And, you know, the only other option you really have is either through a traditional atelier, or if you go to I don't even know if they teach this in college, right? Like I think in college today, they're teaching, you know, I think they're really leaning into what the artist, their personality is, their interests, how they want to be recognized as a painter, really leaning into their strengths, which might not be classical painting, and then really helping to express those strengths within every artist. I think that's what colleges are teaching, but if you want to learn this style, you really have to find a focused school. And if you really want to get good at this stuff, because this this classical style. You're really challenging. You know, these are like monochrome, and then building up color, and then all these things. So this is great. This is a great intro into just like what are the top for the artists that are doing this technique, right? For the artists that are doing these types of beautifully rendered, just classical, soft, wispy, natural paintings. Like, what are they doing, right? What are their techniques? And I think that's where you can find the value, is just knowing that their techniques have been tried and true for hundreds of years. And more than technique, you know, the techniques are there. The techniques are learnable. What is in this is achievable, right? The techniques are there. They've been tried and true for hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe, probably hundreds of years. And you know why I know that's true is not just from this one book, but there's that other great book that I showed earlier, the artwork of the great masters. It's all the way at the bottom now, so I don't feel like moving my books around. But the techniques of the great art masters of the world, or whatever. Pretty much every artist from 1300 to like 1600, and even today, there's artists today that still use the grid system, still use monochromatic styles, still use the exact methods that are being explained in here. It's just I think where there's I went to a digital art school. I didn't go to traditional college for painting or art or whatever. So I don't know exactly what they are teaching, but based on my understanding today, they're not like making you sit around and just do these classical atelier paintings all day. Maybe they might have one or two classes, but I think it's a lot of discussion, a lot of critique nowadays, and based on what I've read, it's about, you know, really leaning into a artist's strength and helping them express that to the fullest extent possible, whether that means sculpture or writing or storytelling or whatever that is. And where did I get that from? Where did I even learn that? I read that somewhere. When I did digital art, it was like digital painting and concept art. So it's very specific, conceptual, all the things you need to know. And here, of course, what would a book recommendation be without an oil painting for dummies book? Pretty amazing. The four dummies book is actually pretty good because it also comes with like online resources that you can use. And you know, there's always like for dummies. I mean, do I even need to explain a for dummies book? I feel like I don't need to explain a for dummies book because a for dummies book, I mean, it tells you the tools, the techniques. It breaks everything down very simply. It gives you different exercises, gives you online references. Like there's a reason why for dummies books are so successful. And you know, do this and you can paint. And it really gives some fun ideas and techniques. But I've been talking for far too long, and I'm starting to stutter. Here we go. I probably need a drink of water soon. But packed with full color, easy to complete projects. Fun and easy way to discover your inner artist through oil painting. I think what's great about the For Dummies books is the idea that it's for dummies. Like that idea is a joke in itself, right? Like it's fun. Like nobody likes to be called a dummy unless they're reading a book for dummies, and even then they don't want to be called a dummy. But you know, starting from absolutely nothing and just learning how to paint, mix colors. Like I think For Dummies books are so good at just being totally comprehensive, covering just about everything you need from start to finish. And if that's a book that you need, that is great. And it has the exercises. It's casual, it's fun. And here's the thing. Let's compare these two books, right? And this is why I recommend For Dummies over the classical atelier painting. If you pick up the classical atelier painting, she doesn't really go over the basics. She goes over the foundation of how every painting has been done throughout, like, well, not every painting, but, you know, how painting has been done throughout history, right? But you're going to go into this book, and you're going to learn about composition, you're going to learn about monochromatic painting, and although she goes into detail, you're going to get lost. You're not going to be able to make paintings like this right away, depending on how new you are. And then you're probably going to get frustrated. But because it doesn't look the way that you expected it to look. But she has some great fundamentals in here, great skills, great knowledge in here. I highly recommend this book. But you're gonna get frustrated. You're not gonna like learn these techniques overnight, but still good to learn the ideas, right? To get the most basic fundamental ideas. But what's great about the For Dummies book, if you're a beginner, or even if you're intermediate, you're gonna be able to go through this book, maybe find things that you're missing, find skills that you're missing, find tools that you're missing, find ideas that you're missing, find exercises that you're missing, and you know what? All these paintings I think are very attainable. Now I don't want to say they're easy or simple, but they're very attainable, and they've simplified it even further for you, breaking down everything in a very very easy to consume way. And I'm not saying that these paintings are easy, but they're quite attainable. And because it's a For Dummies book, like there's not this pressure to make this classical painting, atelier style, right? That's my a little bit of a sarcasm there, but you know, there's no expectation for that. It's just, hey, like, just do a painting. You know, go enjoy yourself, go have fun. I didn't mean to make fun of classical painting atelier folks, but it can feel a little bit uptight, right? So that was my purpose of contrasting the potential uptightness of trying to learn a classical atelier style versus, hey, just picking up a brush, learning from some award-winning artists, Sherry Stone Clifton and Anita Giddings, and learn to master the basics, know how to work with paint from beginning to, you know, eventually you might want to move towards a classical atelier. Maybe you could even learn how to paint classical atelier style from this book. But it's quirky, it's fun. For Dummies books, it's for everybody. For everybody. And great lessons. Like, this is all very wonderful and attainable activities. For Dummies. I mean, this is, like, who doesn't know what a For Dummies book is? Just absolutely great for any artist out there. Build it up, build up the images. There you have it. Okay, we are almost nearing the end of our books. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what? Let's do this one next. We're going to do imaginative realism. No art or painting book collection is complete without a James Gurney book. And of course this has a, you know, imaginary figure. I don't even know what this is. Like the prequel to Yoda, maybe. But James Gurney, he created a series called Dinotopia. And earlier I was talking about how great it is to read Vincent van Gogh's letters and to listen to it, because I feel like not enough artists really put themselves out there and express the entire creative process in full, their thoughts, their expressions, their fears, their, you know, discomforts, their the things that they feel great about. Not enough artists go through those things or share those things. And not enough artists are really great teachers that are great at explaining things. And even then, out of the people that commit themselves to artwork their entire lives, aka James Gurney, that commit themselves to this idea of understanding light, understanding paint, studying paint their entire lives, and can write good books about it and do interesting things, that is so rare, which is why, you know, James Gurney, I mean, he's successful for a reason. That's why people like the concept artist of Star Wars reaches out to him. That's why Dennis Nolan of the Hartford Art School looks to him for guidance. That's why Frank Constantino, the co-founder of the American Society of Architectural Illustrators, goes to him. That's why all these amazing people go to him for or are willing to review his stuff. So let me see. There's one of my favorite. Maybe it's not in this. Yeah, it's not in this. But he covers like everything in here, right? So this is imaginative realism. He has another book. I don't know where it's at right now. I have it, but it's called Color and Light, I think. I don't know what happened to it. I thought I had it, but anyway, Color and Light is his book that's mostly on painting. Imaginative realism. Just imagine it's like a similar design, but except it's totally on color and light. I think this is definitely more on making up scenes and like putting things together. And what I love about James Gurney though is that he's still alive. You can still follow him on social media, and he still like gives like these quick tutorials, insights into his life, his experiences. I mean, really amazing person to just follow and keep up with. And he has all these books that he has committed to teaching the art of his art. Like he has literally dedicated his entire life to having, or so it seems at least. I mean, I don't know him necessarily in his private life, but on the surface level of the stuff that I see on social media and everything, I mean, there's very few artists that actually do this, right? There's very few artists that can paint, can also explain and teach, and has also committed themselves almost like an engineering scientific level to the craft of understanding light, understanding realism, and has also built up this amazing entrepreneurial endeavor of creating the world Dinotopia. I mean, I feel like as far as creative people goes, I am so surprised and amazed that James Gurney is like has still managed to keep so low key. He talks about video game design, toy design, character design, creating these imaginary fictional universes. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of the art in this is all amazing and it's all his, which can be rare to find in these books because a lot of these books, sometimes they're by other people. So I'm trying to see, I mean, he just loves the art of painting. And, that's another thing too, or the art of art is, I feel it's important to surround myself by content, by books, by materials, reading materials of people that are like more obsessed than me, right? Like people that committed their entire lives, 50, 60 years. Like I can't make, like this is an entire lifetime of work that James Gurney is sharing in this book. I'm not sure if all of these are his or if, he has different artists who helped him to make Dinotopia. But there is power that, or energy that is transferred when you simply have the energy of the people in some of these books. And you just know how committed somebody like James Gurney is. I mean, you can't not have his book on your shelf. But that said, there's two versions of this book. One of them is imaginative realism, and then the second book, it's not a version, it's just a different book, but both by James Gurney in a similar style. It's called Color and Light, I think. And that book has more details on paints. He's got an entire appendix and reference on paints, and like if you want to get into that and get nitty-gritty, I mean, this is engineering and scientific level study of art or painting, color, light, mixed with somebody who actually knows how to teach and explain it, mixed with someone who's worked in the field for many, many years, that's also highly reputable. I mean, I don't feel like I need to pitch James Gurney, but if you don't know who he is, even if you know who he is and you haven't gotten his book, just get the book just to support this entire lifetime of commitment to the craft. And not only that, but on social media now, it's gotten more intimate in that, not like intimate, but it's gotten more intimate in a sense that he shares a lot of his day-to-day activities with people that are into art and learning how to paint. So he shares more like day in the life of things. So James Gurney, he shares his techniques. You've got such a comprehensive story, or like this even goes into storytelling, creativity. I don't know how many artists are like James Gurney, but there's not many, right? There's artists who are artists. There's artists who probably should be writers. There's writers who should probably be painters. There's engineers who could paint, but they can't really explain things. They're not really good teachers. There's teachers who probably aren't really great artists, and teachers that are not great artists, but or There's great teachers that are not great artists and great artists that are not good teachers. But James Gurney is probably the most like he is the Renaissance man of modern art. I don't want to say teaching because he's not a teacher. He's an artist that just so happens to be willing to fully express and share all his techniques. Like he's just there, man. He's not, yeah. I wanted to say teacher, but he's not even just a teacher. He's not a teacher. He's like, there's so many great things to learn from him. He has embodied the ultimate master of many of the areas of sharing art, I guess. All right, let's go to this book. Here's a fun little find that I got. I don't remember if I got this at a bookstore or a used bookstore, but Modern Painting, or maybe I got it from Amazon. I don't exactly remember. Oh, well, yeah, I got it from the store. Okay, I'm gonna pull out those. Oh, that got rid of my chapter. There we go. I usually dog ear my books, so it's not too bad. But modern Painting, a concise history, World of Art, modern painting. I think this is a book series, the World of Art series, a series. But I love this book. Because I like books I like art history, but not necessarily for the art history of it, not the history element of it, as much as it is I love learning the ideas that either help to inspire artists or the ideas that you might find, like the transformation of art over time and how that happens. I guess that is art history. I really enjoy reading that, but like not history for the sake of history and just knowing what happened, but history because I feel like you can find a lot of answers if you're trying to be creative. And if you want to make art that's, I don't want to say like evolved, but like art that's like modern, contemporary, or like has a modern feel, it's good to know where it's already been, so you don't necessarily need to repeat it. You can if you like, but also and you can't really establish, no one really knows where it's going to go or who's going to be next or whatever. But in the most like wonderful sense of knowing that as an artist, you don't have to go back to the 1400s and do a classical painting atelier, right? There's artists that do that, and maybe you can flex and show that you can do that, and maybe you even sell more paintings that way. But creatively speaking, as an artist, we've come way beyond that, and it's nice to know the history, right? It's nice to know that we're not in 1970, like we already had a Basquiat. And I'm not saying not to copy Basquiat, but we already had a Basquiat. We've even moved, maybe Basquiat is still iconic for our time and people want to copy him because his artwork really resonates with today. Being, he's probably a visionary, so, it takes quite a few years for some things to click sometimes. But like knowing that he was there, right? He was here. And his art is standing the test of time. People still want to copy him. But where else can it go? Right? Where have we moved beyond, artistically speaking? And there's some people that their interest in artwork ends in 1950, maybe like 1920, maybe the 1900s. I don't know. Maybe it ended with Picasso, their interest as far as art history goes. But I love, learning about how art has transformed. And it's so interesting to know, like all of the things that had to happen in order for modern art to finally be here. And so cool. And I think these books for me, if you take the time to read them especially and learn the stories and like, know their artists' reasons and, how curators and critics feel about their work, I think the most helpful thing for me in knowing these things is, I guess, reducing the fear, right? Reducing a fear, like making art that's too weird, right? You can make art that's weird. Make art that people won't understand. Make art um, that is meant to fill space and not just be a painting, maybe, or make art that is just a simple mark, right? It almost gives you mission because all these artists had to really sacrifice or not sacrifice, but take risks on their careers. Because prior to any of these, the modern contemporary artists, a lot of it was unacceptable, right? You couldn't make Jackson Pollock before in the Renaissance. You know, he couldn't exist in the Renaissance. Not only because he probably wouldn't have been accepted into the art, but like the kings and the queens and the royal families wouldn't have hired him because he was just, you know, he wasn't. It wasn't. Maybe you could have had a Jackson Pollock in the Renaissance. I don't know, but you know, Pablo Picasso had to take a risk on Cubism. There was a time when Pablo Picasso was either going to make it or break with Cubism. And then we needed, you know, a Francis Bacon. And then we needed a Jackson Pollock and a Basquiat. And then, you know, we needed a Banksy and the Banana Guy, Catalan, and a Duchamp and a Hockney and a de Kooning. And we needed all these people to really push art where it is today. And I think if you can look past that, all the context, or not past it, but look into the whole full context of everything, I think you get a really good appreciation for some of these ideas. But I don't know, does this really help the artist? Maybe, but definitely if you love art or have even wanted an interest in art or grow an interest in art, what a great, quick. This is a very digestible read, and each chapter is pretty quick. I mean, this is a smaller book. It's got a lot of text, but it's a smaller book. And, you know, this is a great alternative to some of the audiobooks I mentioned. So let's see, we got 3 books left. Keys to Drawing by Bert Dodson. As far as drawing books go, I think that this is one of the first art drawing books that I really liked. And here's why. So if you go on a lot of courses today, so I've taken Proco, and I've done the whole Draw Cube thing, Proco. I've taken courses from Peter Han, Kim Jung-ji. Most of those are online, so, you know, not in-person instruction. But I have had, you know, video courses and one-on-one mentorship. Like, you know, direct mentorship through some of those programs. And you can learn a lot from those. But there's a type of drawing that you learn from those courses, Proco, Peter Han, Kim Jung-ji, you know, these other courses, that there's just a certain style. They all have their style, right? And I would say that Kim Jung-ji is definitely not for the beginner. He has an online course. You know, may he rest in peace. But he has an online course. I don't think it's for beginners. It's geared towards like artists who probably drawn for a while just to like learn things. But I wouldn't say, and this may be a little bit off topic, but I wouldn't say that Kim Jung-ji is a great teacher. But he is a great artist, and he's able to like break down some things, but he's not able to break it down enough for beginners. But great course. I mean, if you have a chance to go through his program, great course. Peter Han is a great online teacher. I went through his thing. Proco he has a lot of great online tutorials. DrawCube is a great resource. But there's a style in those programs, and they just never really resonated with me. Proco almost feels a little too classical, and I feel like some of the interviews he's done, just like, it's too stuffy. I want to say like the Proco, some of the courses just feel really stuffy. Like they're just so precise, such a precision to their style of drawing that it's good to learn. It's good to have the draftspersonship. It's good to have the drafting skills. But what I love about this book is that Bert Dodson is a fantastic drawing artist. And I know I'm criticizing those other courses. They're amazing courses. Don't take the criticism as like, you know, don't do them. You should definitely consider them. But as far as drawing is concerned, the reason why I'm sharing all of that is when you look at these drawings, when you look at these very, very loose drawings that Bert Dodson does, your first, my first initial reaction is not that, he went to the finest atelier or that I'm going to be able to draw like the most classical Leonardo da Vinci-esque Michelangelo 1400s Renaissance. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to draw like that from this book. But I do feel that from Bert Dodson that I can learn, and it helped me a lot. I do feel as if I can learn how to draw loosely. I can learn how to draw like myself, right? And that's where I think you get a lot of yourself. Is learning to draw as yourself, right? Learning from mentors are helpful, learning courses, and then eventually narrowing down to something. But finding where your own strengths lie, like draw a cube, if you do draw a cube, like I feel like, your drawings get really stiff and like mechanical. Like everything just kind of has like a blocky look. And maybe that's your style. Maybe that's the style you want. But where I think like a book like this, you're going to find more looseness. You're going to find your personal energy. You're going to find how you observe the world and choose to interact with it, how you choose to interpret things. So Bert Dodson, Keys to Drawing. I feel like this book is really great in helping you pull from yourself the most authentic form of drawing rather than just learning a specific rigorous method of drawing that's going to give you a different look. And again, it depends on your goals, right? Maybe you need to be like, I feel like people that are geared towards the more like draft person, like they're probably already going to be some sort of engineer, right? It appeals to them to learn how to use a ruler to draw a car or a compass and use tools and draw perfect precision like things. And then there's artists who are already naturally geared towards or naturally inclined to be more loose, who already want to be loose and expressive and find their natural instinctual ways of drawing. And I think that's where Bert Dodson, his artwork really gives you a feeling that you have permission to do. And when I say permission, there's like, permission. Like that's the way he draws, right? It's just this loose, fun, interpretive style. Yes, he has the skills to do these like really, really fine drawing techniques, right? He has the skills, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like he's making you lose yourself. It doesn't make you feel like you're losing the opportunity to find the version of drawing that you want to make. And I think that's really powerful. So, depending on whether you want to go, that's what makes art so interesting. There's always an argument like, oh, abstract, anybody can do it, or like, well, this person was a drafts person and this person was just an expressive person. And then like, different art schools are like, oh, well, you should be a better drafts person, or you need to like fine tune you need to go become an anatomy expert before you can draw. And I actually had someone tell me like, hey dude, you shouldn't try to express yourself until, there was someone on Reddit. I don't like Reddit, by the way. I get banned from every Reddit because I just don't like the fact that they don't allow you to. Okay, I'm not gonna explain why I don't like Reddit, but with that said, I had this guy on Reddit, and he's like, dude, you shouldn't try to paint expressively. And I'm making up a voice for him. I don't know what he sounds like, but you shouldn't, try to paint expressively until, I've spent 9 years mastering and becoming a drafts person, and you look at my art and it's like meticulous, and it wasn't really that good, honestly, with as much as they were like getting into it. But they were like, oh, you shouldn't try to freestyle and have fun. You didn't say not have fun. You shouldn't be like trying to be expressive and loosening up until you've become a master and mastered the techniques and everything. And I agree in the sense that mastery is important. Take the time to learn art, Take the time to, like, maybe develop some level of draftspersonship if you want to do certain things. But the way they said it, it's just like so stuffy and uptight. Like, where did they study from? I don't know. I don't understand. Like, people online, that didn't sit well with me. And that's the type of art that I'm just like, I can't. Like, I believe that artists should spend a lot of time. Maybe it's not 10 years. Maybe you can get 10,000 hours in. Well, how many hours? Alexa, how many years is 10,000 hours?
10,000 hours is 1 year and 2 months.
Okay, so 10,000 hours is only 1 year and 2 months. So I think technically in 3 years, if you drew and did art every day, you could cover 10,000 hours and become your own master. You don't need 10 years. Obviously, that's a totally hypothetical situation. I think realistically, if you were going to do the 10,000 hours, it would probably take about 10 years. Let's see, 1,000 hours a year over 10 years, yeah, that would probably be a level of mastery that most people would be accepting. But again, this guy, I mean, there was just a level of overly strictness when it came to art that felt so limiting, and I felt bad for him that he felt so limited by himself. And that's not the type of teachers I like, at least. But this is the type of teacher that appeals to me, right? This is the type of teacher that I could learn from, right? And I don't even feel like I necessarily need their instruction, because they just have this freedom, right? They just have this freedom of letting the pencil paint find their way around. And maybe there would be some super strict drafts person who is like, well, you know what? Like, the proportions aren't perfect, and the shading's not exact, and look at that, like, you can't see the eye detail, and some of the things are like shifted up a little bit and whatever. But I think that this book can really help you unleash your personal a personal style, a personal way of drawing, rather than a rigorous technical way of drawing, if that's what appeals to you. Anyway, let's continue. We've got 2 books left, right? 2 more books. And have I gone through all of these books? No, because this is a great example of a book that is fantastic, but you don't need to go through it to know it, because it's so well designed, so well written, that just owning it and going through the first few chapters alone is enough to help you get started. And here's why. So here's a great book. It's called The Beginner's Guide to Oil Painting, Simple Still Life Projects to Help You Master the Basics, by Craig Stevens. And I'm going to cover 3 things. The simplicity of this book. 1, why it's a book that is great to have even if you don't need beyond the first 3 chapters, the first 4 chapters. And I don't know what the 3rd thing is, but I'm sure something will come up. I just said 3 things, because I felt like I'd come up with 2 things. But first, this book really is about the basics. And with anything, the basics, everything is built on the basics, right? Everything is built on basics. Every single color combination is built on fundamental basic color theory, right? Mixing colors. Every drawing that we've seen, like I've showed a bunch of books now. If you've been here for the whole time, then you probably get an idea. But every single, like, the lessons that you learn in this book, you pretty much learn in the other books as well, right? Just the most basic idea. Fill in, design, do an outline, maybe do a grid system if you really want, paint, and then paint it, and then build upon that paint. It's the most fundamental basic element anywhere. And why would you get this book out of the other books that teach you almost the exact same things, maybe in different ways, maybe with more or less lessons? Here's why I think this book is great. It's because it keeps it simple. I probably only went through the first 4 books. In fact, one of my favorite paintings, it was a paper bag that I have. I have a shirt of it. I'm not wearing it right now. But you really only need like the first 4 or 5 chapters. And then, because he does a great job of teaching you, of course you get the basics, like, how do you mix paint? How do you set up? What materials you need? Some color theory. But then it gets right into the exercises. And all this book is exercises on still lifes. And why would you get a book on exercises on still lifes? Because anybody can set up a still life in their living room and just start painting. You don't need a book to do that. But what Craig does great is that he sets this book up, explains the process. Every single process is essentially the same. Every single time you're just mastering the basics. And if you can drill that enough into yourself, that if everything is enough, just the basics, just building up the color, and you do that with still lifes, like how can something so simple be so beautifully painted, right? How can something so simple be painted and just made into like a simple masterpiece? Like how, right? Because you're just mastering the basics. And then if you can trust yourself, I think what's really good is this book really builds your confidence and trust in a process. And although my paintings are pretty loose, I don't always do the same process every time. Maybe some are. Oh yeah, by the way, this a James Gurney recommends this book, so why not, right? If James Gurney says it's good, it's good. But after the first few chapters, it's just basically more still lifes, right? These explanations are there if you need it. But more importantly, you know, he pretty much repeats himself, but with different exercises. And I think why that's so valuable though is it just reminds you that if you ever need to do something, if you ever need to do a painting, whether it's as simple as a single object still life or as complex as a, you know, multi-figure painting, you at least have this confidence, this knowledge, this experience, this wisdom that through practicing just the simplest objects over and over, different objects, you can't not only can you create something nice and interesting to look at, but if you just apply a simple basic process to bigger paintings, you can trust that it's going to be complete. And it is just from the basics that you can make everything possible. So this is a really good book. Also, Craig commented on my video one time, so I feel obligated to continue to. But oh yeah, here's another thing. Like sometimes I sit around and I'm thinking of what I'm gonna paint, and I think to myself, oh well, I can't paint that, and you know that's really hard, and I have to paint something, you know, amazing. But sometimes you really just gotta sit down and just paint something. Sometimes you really just gotta sit down and just be like, hey, I'm gonna do a still life. Why can't I do a still life? Because throughout a lots of time, still lifes have been like the most iconic way to learn painting, and still lifes have also been very, very valuable. And I think this is a great book that reminds you, if you ever feel stuck, if you ever feel like you have creative block, if you ever feel like, you know, you need some inspiration, this book is great. It's telling you that you don't have to paint some brilliant masterpiece that's beautiful. You sometimes maybe just need to do a nice small painting of a still life, of your watermelon, of a toothbrush, of a glass of water with a lemon in it, of a silver pot. It's great. I love this book. It's just a reminder, like like this is almost a book that says you can never have an excuse for creative block because you should always have an object that you can paint. And artists throughout history have actually demonstrated the truth in that, where there's paintings of just a pair of shoes, a pair of worn out shoes on top of a book, or a pair of worn out shoes and a potato sack, and that is a masterpiece, right? So just a reminder, right? No creative block. You never need to have a creative block when it comes to painting. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't say that you don't feel like doing a still life because it just seems like, you know, you want to find your next source of inspiration. You can do that, but if you ever feel stuck and you just got to do something, you're craving, your energy is saying, oh, I have to paint something, I have to paint something. It doesn't have to be anything beyond a still life, right? It can keep simple, and it can look great. It can look like a beautiful classic painting. Well, maybe not classic, but it can look really good. All right, one last book. And this is Alla Prima 2, Everything I Know About Painting and More by Richard Schmidt. So as you can see, Richard Schmidt. I mean, he's an award-winning artist, won many awards. Yeah, well, look, classical style, but his big thing is that he paints alla prima, or as some might call it, in one sitting. Now, I don't actually think he does it all. Every single painting he's ever done is in one sitting, but the lessons that you learn in this book can definitely be applied. And this is a bit of a pricey book, but Richard Schmidt, very well-known author, very respected artist, very well-known artist, and I'm really thinking about the organization of this book and where the appeal is. I mean, he really does a great job of going through all the secrets. I think that where this book is really helpful is it comes from a really reputable source, and where Richard Schmidt is awesome is he shares a lot of his like creative philosophy, which, like, there's some stuff that he says where if you're a beginner artist, like for example, this is going to sound like a controversial, some artists are going to say, wow, you can't do that, but you have to study anatomy and the structure of things. You know, there's probably some artists that'll listen to this and think that, but you know, Richard Schmidt in this book says that, you know, it used to be traditionally and classically that people painted and drew because they didn't truly have full grasp of light and understanding of the science of light. And because of that, back in the day, you had to study a bird, right? You had to like find a dead bird and then like study its anatomy, or you had to observe a human being for hours on end. You didn't have photos, so you had to really study these things. But according to Richard Schmidt, and this is going to sound controversial, but according to him, you don't actually have to study all of these technical things in depth. As long as you can understand how to see light and understand how it goes around a form, then you don't need to study anatomy to know how to paint a human being. As long as as long as your skills of observation are there, right? If you can observe the human being, if you can know how to see, if you can know how to mix the colors and things like that, that's what is going to help you. But it's great to hear certain philosophies that, you know, like very strict artists might be against, but to know that there are some really talented artists that you can trust and rely upon that gives you the real advice, right? The real advice, not the advice that sounds good and like, you know, makes you feel like, well, I need to go do this technical thing. And there's technical stuff, right? There's technical stuff. You gotta improve on your drawing, your color mixing, your color theory. There's a lot of technical stuff that he goes over, and knowing how to mix paint, knowing how it works, knowing how to draw, capture light. Like, there's technical things, but there's certain philosophies that don't get shared in your typical art class. At least not the ones I've been in. There's not, and like also online groups I think can be really harmful for artists if you're not like careful, because like there's a lot of artists that are just totally focused on critiquing just pointless things. And if you're not cautious of that, you can focus on the wrong things. But where you get some great wisdom is from Richard, where he gives it to you the way he believes it, the way he knows it, the way that he's dedicated many years to. And there's not much content from Richard out there. I wish he made more videos. I tried looking videos, but I think they either keep it, or the state is really protective of it, or he just didn't make more videos. Maybe he was camera shy. I don't know. But Richard Schmidt, alla prima. I think Richard Schmidt, he's such a credible artist. He's so well known, so successful. and he does such a great job sharing his paintings where, sometimes you need a guide that is reputable that can tell you to go be free, right? To go be free with your art, to go express yourself a bit more. I mean, obviously paint well, but just find a little bit more of yourself in things. And I think Richard does a great job of that. He definitely combines the technical with the authority. So it does help that he has the authority. And then where do you become a better artist with this is how you put it into action, right? All of this is helpful. All of this is nice, but put that stuff to work. Put that brush to the canvas. And again, like it's not just the books. Back to that book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. I love this idea of like full immersion into things. Bobo Go. Hey, you came at an interesting time because I'm actually about to sign off. But what you going to do with all that paint? All that paint inside your trunk. All right, Bobo Go. So yeah, I mean, you got to put it into action. But I think it's helpful to have full immersion, right? The reading, the activity, the Audible books. If you're on, I think you could get a free trial membership, Audible trial, free trial membership, and that gives you an access to a lot of the books that we talk about, and I think that really helps with the full immersion. Reading, exercise, painting, audio, and like live mentorship where someone's actually maybe even guiding your hand. But with that said, let's take a break. I need some water. I probably won't be able to talk for a day. Explaining things is and reviewing things is it's quite a lot of work. So hey Bobo, thanks for stopping in last minute to serenade me with your Black Eyed Peas song. And those of you on YouTube and everything, thank you for being here as well. And we're gonna get out of here.